Hi, my name is Paul Vanderklay. I'm the pastor of Livingstone's Christian Reformed Church on Florin Road in Sacramento, and I'm doing a series I call Parenting Through Adulthood. Now, as I mentioned in the first video, there are hosts of materials for parenting for people who are expecting to be parents, people who are parents of young children, people who are parents of grade school children, people who are parenting teens, but there are relatively few books about parenting adult children. Now, I picked up 3 of them in anticipation for this course, and I read them, and I thought all 3 were reasonably good books. Now, most of the books that you will find on this deal with boundaries, and that's really quite a good place to begin. Now, the Boundaries book movement really got going with a book by Henry Cloud and John Townsend, who wrote a terrific bestseller called Boundaries: When to Say Yes, When to Say No. New York Times bestseller, over 2 million copies sold, and there was a video course associated with it and lots of workbooks, and really spawned a whole industry. My take on the Boundaries book is that they're a good broad spectrum relational antibiotic, and what I mean by that is that these will help you organize and orient a lot of relationships in your life. We need boundaries with our children, with our adult children, with our young children, with other people that we go to church with family relations, with our siblings, with our parents, with our bosses, with coworkers. Boundaries, the boundary system or metaphor that these authors put into place is very, very helpful for helping people figure out when to say yes, when to say no, how to sort out their lives. And so, I really recommend this, but it's important to remember that this is a broad spectrum antibiotic, and when it comes to a lot of the kinds of things that you deal with parenting, I find part of the reason these relationships are so difficult is that your children, as they grew, have grown far more complex. Their lives are much more complex, and the challenges they face are far more powerful, often in relationship to the power that you might bring to bear. So again, all of these are fine books. I think the Boundary books are also welcome, and if you've never read any of them, I recommend them. They do a good job. They're written for a Christian audience, but I think those of you who aren't Christian can probably benefit from them too. Now, really, the heart of the Boundaries conversation is to figure out what's yours and what's not. And one of the quickest ways to figure that out is to figure out what you are in control of. Let's say you are irritated because your son or daughter keeps a messy car. Now, if you don't share this car with them, then you're not really in control of whether or not they're going to keep it messy. Now, if they do keep it messy, this might bother you, but you're probably just going to have to get a grip on yourself and say, okay, you can decide to keep nagging them. But if you're nagging them, then you're doing other work, probably damaging work in the relationship. And so then you're probably going to have to ask yourself, now, why am I so bothered by how messy my child's car is, or their room, or their life, or their marriage, or how chaotic your grandchildren are, and you don't think that your children are disciplining them properly. All of those things you're not in control of. And so really, Boundaries is not so much about pushing others out of your life. They're more about figuring out what is yours and what is not yours. And one of the first lines that you can see, and it's a very realistic line. It's a very truthful line, is that of control. If you can't control something, but your adult child can control it, then it belongs to them and not you. Now, you might have a degree of influence over them. You might have some things that you want to say to them about it, but this belongs to them and not you, and it's important for you to get a hold of that. Now, the second area that comes up quickly is, what are you responsible for? Now, this one is quite a bit more difficult, because we are sometimes responsible, or we have responsibility over things that we don't really have control. And that's usually because we have shared responsibility over something. And if the line between you and your adult child is something where there's shared responsibility, well, things could get quite a bit more messy more quickly. Also, responsibility is subject to cultural and familial pluralism. In other words, in some families or in some cultures, you are responsible for things, and in other cultures, you're not. And so there's kind of a cloud, a cultural cloud where everyone is determining the rules and has assumptions and expectations about relationships. And it's usually in those gray areas that feelings get hurt, that boundaries get cloudy, that relationships can get torn and stressed. And some examples might be in our culture, the traditional assumption is that the family of the bride should pay for the wedding. Now, perhaps the bride wants an extravagant wedding, and the parents don't feel that an extravagant wedding is necessarily a good use of money. And often there's usually negotiation like that. The parents might say, we have this amount of money that we're willing to give for the wedding, so here it is. Or the parents might say, well, we think that you probably have some larger needs down the road, so we're going to give you this amount of money, but we're offering this amount for the wedding and this other amount for perhaps a down payment on a car or a house. And one of the things that you're going to find is that money is almost always an area that tests boundaries because money is so fungible. It can be used in so many different ways. If, for example, you're good at fixing cars and your son or your daughter has a breakdown, you might be able to step in and help them out with that pretty easily. But if you're not good at fixing cars and they have a breakdown and the car repair costs $2,000 and they don't have it, and you know that they need their car to get to work, now suddenly they look to you, and these are the classic types of parent-adult-child boundary confrontations that we have. Even more critical ones can happen. Should you pay for your unemployed son's medical care? Well, that's really difficult. Now, in the United States, up to the age of 25 or 26, if you have health insurance, they might be under your plan, but after that, they're not. And so if they have a medical emergency, their life or their future welfare may be at stake. And then you have to answer the question, well, should I pay? Well, usually it's, well, can I help? How much can I help? And how measured should my help be? Let's say if your child has an addiction and the medical emergencies are coming as a result of their addictive behavior, well, should you help them out in that case? Or perhaps they have difficulties in their marriage or difficulties in a relationship, and they're asking money for a lawyer for a divorce, or perhaps a therapist for counseling. And so right away, this responsible for measure is cloudy. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Now, a couple more general rules of boundaries are don't do for others what they can do for themselves. And again, that's a good rule. Now, one of the most important things to remember with rules is that there are rules and there are exceptions. And if you're going to use rules well, you have to understand this is a rule and this is an exception. There are rooms for exceptions, but they have to stay exceptions. And there are places for rules and they should stay as rules. And so, again, don't do for others what they can do for themselves is more like the boundary of power. This is not in my control. I can't do anything with it. But now the second one, as with the question of can or power or responsibility, the second one, don't do for others what they should do for themselves. And again, once you place that should word in there, things will get cloudier still. Because again, maybe you think that it's irresponsible for your child to not carry a certain level of car insurance, and then they have an accident and someone sues them. And if they had listened to you and carried a higher limit of car insurance, well, then they maybe would have covered. And now they're in a fix and you have the opportunity to help them. Should you help them, or should they perhaps have to file for bankruptcy and then have difficulty getting loans? And sure, you're weighing all of these things. And so here, this should boundary is a helpful one because you might say, this is a decision that they made. I gave them the best advice I could. They didn't listen to it. Now they have a difficult consequence to face. Should I disrupt that chain of cause and effect, of consequence and of of decision and positive or negative consequence. So should, again, put you back there in the middle of the realm of chaotic complexity. A third thing that these books will talk about will be codependence. Now, this gets into some psychology, and there's a lot of pop psychology about this. Codependence basically is deriving emotional satisfaction from an unhealthy relational pattern. Let's say, I often find that parents are unwilling to speak the truth to their child or unwilling to say no to their adult child because they're afraid that their child won't like them, will shut them out of the relationship, might withhold grandchildren from them. And so sometimes what the parent will do will be to use money or to use agreement or to use a variety of things to keep the child in the relationship. What usually happens, though, is that in the long run, resentment starts building up on both sides because the parent in the relationship knows that they're being disingenuous, and they know that they're placating their adult child, and the more that they placate, that disingenuous posture continues to build up resentment. And often the adult child is fully aware of what the parent really thinks, and resentment will then build up on that side. And then what happens usually with codependency is the situation continues to devolve and get worse and worse and worse. And while both sides on one level continue to placate each other, resentment underneath builds on both sides, and in time that resentment is either going to get manifest, perhaps in addictions, or just explode in a greater rupture of the relationship. And so really the way to avoid codependence is to be honest with yourself, and be honest but not offensive with your adult child or the person with whom you have a relationship, and to begin to work through to the point that both sides can be honest with each other and say, I don't agree with this area of your life, but you're my child and I love you. And so these are the parameters that you can expect from me in terms of my relationship with you and this area of your life. Now, again, your adult child might not like your commitments, but that's paired because you don't like their commitments. And so the better way to proceed with this is to, again, the name of this course is Parenting Through Adulthood. And the goal here is that you model adult behavior. Adulting is a word now, by the way. You model adult behavior to your child, and they begin to mirror that adult behavior. What happens with codependence is that you model codependence to your child, and your child becomes codependent, and you set up this dynamic, and in the end, it's in the long term self-defeating because resentment will build up, and you will either certain areas of your life will fall apart, or you'll explode the relationship because of it. So, what I've been saying in this is that boundaries are a broad spectrum relational antibiotic, and they're very helpful, but sometimes nasty situations come up where you need a targeted antibiotic. And now you're probably not going to be able to get one off the shelf. You're going to have to grow the antibodies for it. And so what I want to give you are some ideas of where to start. So in terms of the problem of, let's say, responsibility or should, because those are gray areas and you're not necessarily going to be able to say clearly, well, okay, so my child is being sued by someone with whom they had a car accident, and the settlement is for more money than I have. Well, if you can't do anything, you can't do anything. But if you do have money, that's where the rub comes, and that's where things go from can to should. And so then you have to ask, well, what can I do? And I'd say begin with culturally settled or traditional assumptions if they dominate the context. For example, if there's a certain level of agreement that you have with your adult child, and there likely will be because you raised this child and they absorbed a lot of your assumptions. Now, in the process of some differentiating, they might be rebelling against some of them, but where to start is by making an argument based on those assumptions. The key element here is a unifying reference point that you can use to justify your no within a framework they might understand. Now, in my work as a pastor, this sometimes is called presuppositional apologetics. And for example, if your child keeps telling you how freedom is so important to them, how they are all grown up and being responsible, well, when they come to you with something that is very anti-freedom and irresponsible, remind them of their value of freedom and responsibility. Now, you should do so gently, and you shouldn't do so with, aha, I told you so in your voice, but simply remind them that, yes, you share these values of freedom and responsibility with your adult child, and this is a good opportunity for them to practice it. Now, they probably won't like what you say, but the truth about relationships is that strong relationships are not simply built on there always being mutual agreement. Strong relationships are actually built kind of the way muscles and bones are built, which is stress and testing and then healing afterwards. If you look into the literature on, say, distressed marriages, most of the literature will tell you something like this, that the key to a healthy marriage is not a marriage in which there is zero conflict. The key to a healthy marriage is a marriage in which there are restorative conversations after the fight. So in other words, the question is not whether or not you fight. The question is what happens after the fight. Can both parties learn the proper postures of reconciliation? Now, again, here, this is a boundaries issue, because you may be able to come to your child because you've already developed the differentiation and the capacity to come to your child in a reasonable way and say, we had a fight. I'm sorry about that. This is my position. I don't want to break the relationship. I would like to stay in relationship with you. And your child might say, I don't care, go jump off a bridge. I don't want to be around you. And the child might walk away. And the child might walk away for hours or days or months or years. Now, boundaries says you are not in control of how your child responds to your behavior. What you should do is respond to your child in the proper way, and hopefully in time that child will come back to you. But that is no guarantee of whether or not that child will come back to you. If you go back and look at videos 1 and 2, that's why I laid the groundwork for that. All relationships involve suffering. All relationships will be ended by conflict or death. Now, that's a hard thing for us to swallow. And again, I deal with this as a Christian minister because I believe the gospel offers resources for this reality in this world. If you're parenting through adulthood, you have to model adulthood to your child, and along with that, what you should focus on is prayer. Pray that the Lord enable your child to grow up, to grow into the Lord, to grow in responsibility, to grow in maturity. And for the most part, the best you can do is model adulthood, model your faith, model the Christian life, and what your adult child decides to do with that, that's going to be up to them. Beyond that, you'll have to figure out what you will do and what you won't do. So now in a real boundary, your no doesn't limit their action or the necessity of an action they are avoiding. In other words, in a real boundary, let's say your adult child has an alcohol problem, and their alcohol problem has been a problem for their work situation. And they are asking you to, in some ways, cover for them, to go to their boss and say, well, so-and-so is sick because of a different medical thing, not alcohol. And so I'd like, can you please do this? Now, if you go to groups like Al-Anon, they will give you a lot of wisdom about dealing with alcoholism and other addictive behaviors. But the question here is, you say, no, I'm not going to go to your boss and lie on your behalf to cover up your alcoholism. And then your adult child will say, well, if you don't do this, I'll lose my job. And then they will usually take the further step of saying, I will lose my job because you're not lying for me. That's not true. They are in danger of losing their job because they are drinking. And your lying essentially perpetuates their ability to drink, and what they really need to come to grips with is their drinking. So this is often foisted on parents. If you don't intervene, then this will happen. And a parent will say, yeah, that's true. It will intervene. My no is my own, and it's proper and legitimate for me to give it. I'm deeply sorry about the consequence. I really don't want to see the pain this is going to cause in your life, but no. And then you stick with the no. Now, don't impede the relationship of action avoidance and negative consequences in your offspring's world. And this, again, is the alcohol illustration is about this. There are causes and effects in this world, and a big part of becoming an adult is realizing the causes and effects, and then really, as an adult, absorbing responsibility when these things happen. And now, those of you who are adults, or those of you who are my age, know that we don't stop learning these lessons in our teens or 20s or 30s. We continue to learn them in our 40s, 50s, and 60s, and obviously the sooner we learn them, the better, but they are there. And so this is parenting through adulthood. Be an adult so that your child can learn adulthood from you. Next. See, I wrote something that doesn't make any sense. Don't do something. What I really wanted to say, are you doing something your child can do for his or herself? That's how it should read. Are you doing something your child can do for his or herself? And again, this is the easier boundary test. If, let's say, your child is not keeping their house clean, or not keeping their car clean, and you're going over to their house and cleaning it for them, or you're going over to their car to clean it for them, well, now, legitimately, if you decide this is something you really like doing, if you really like cleaning. Now, this again is why the boundaries thing, these rules aren't hard and fast always. Even a rule like this, maybe you just love cleaning cars. Well, have at it. Your child will love it if you clean their car. In fact, if you love cleaning cars, you can come to my house and clean my car. That would be fine. But if you're cleaning your child's car and you're increasingly resenting your child for keeping a dirty car and you're cleaning it still, well, now's the time to have a talk with yourself and to ask yourself, why am I cleaning my child's car? This is their responsibility. It's not mine. I need to leave it on their side of the fence and leave it alone. That's where parenting through adulthood gets into you having to be an adult and saying, if I hate cleaning my child's car, I'm going to stop. This comes into questions of childcare. Maybe you love your grandchild. Maybe you want to be a grandparent and not a parent. And so every time your child calls and says, "Hey, can you take care of the kid?" You say, "No, it doesn't work for me today. I love my grandchild, but I want to be a grandparent and not their parent. And so these are the parameters around which I'm willing to take care of my grandson or granddaughter." It's learning to say no. And then the question of, is this creating a situation of dangerous dependency? Now everything in this world is subject to the age of decay. And so, you can't do everything forever, but chances are you will perish, you will die before your offspring. And so what you want to generally do, these are generalizations, what you want to generally do is care, is help your adult child in a way that long-term will lead to independence. Now, if you read these relational books, independence is stressed. Independence is a good thing. Independence is not an ultimate thing. All of us are, in fact, dependent upon each other and dependent upon God. But independence is, generally speaking, a good value. And so you want to, at whatever level your child is capable. Now, I know some of you have children who are on disability, they have mental health issues, and so all of these things are variable. But hopefully with the help of wise friends and and counselors around you, you can make some determination of what an appropriate level of independence is for the capacity of your adult child, even if your child is disabled. And then you work towards that level. Do you have a relationship of feared or implied blackmail? Now, I talked about this a little bit, where there's a codependent relationship, and it might not even be spoken, but it's very much there that the child is signaling that unless you, well, violate a boundary in some way for them, they are going to punish you. Now, this dynamic of reward and punishment in relationships is normal, and I think in many ways healthy. If you do something that pleases me, I should smile. If you do something that doesn't please me, I can signal that, perhaps with a frown. And what boundaries and adulthood is about is being able to recognize the boundary and say, okay, I like pleasing people because I like getting that reward, but people-pleasing itself can be an addiction. And so there are limits to that. And again, this is all within a very complex matrix of love your enemies, speak the truth in love. I mean, the Bible uses all of these kinds of phrases. Now, what happens sometimes is that there is a situation of emotional blackmail. And again, as I talked about codependence, what happens is that you'll know that there's a situation of relational blackmail because resentment is building up. And you're increasingly being forced to do something that you believe is inauthentic or against your will. Now sometimes, again, we do all these things, and sometimes we decide, okay, I've decided that in this relationship, I want this relationship and it costs me this. And so I've settled in my heart that this is the price for these goods in this relationship. And if you've come to a degree of peace in your heart about that, well, there it is. The question is, are you building resentment? Because resentment is a toxic sludge that as it builds up will eventually destroy the relationship or destroy you. Most addictive behaviors are fueled by resentment. And so if there's relational blackmail in the relationship, it's time to pay the piper and to say to the other person, well, you're holding this over me. You're going to walk away from me. Okay, that would make me very sad. I would hate to see you do it. I think it's the wrong thing, but that's yours to do. You may do so. So go ahead. And yes, I will hurt. And so again, here, the adult thing to do is say, I will shoulder the pain. I will no longer contribute to this unhealthy relationship. I will no longer succumb to the blackmail. And so you call their bluff and you say, I don't want it. This is your choice. So be it. And I hope we can work through this. Another thing I just briefly wanted to talk about were secrets. There's a difference between privacy and secrets. Privacy is something that is rightly and happily kept from public view. Now, let's use the example of clothing. Your clothing affords your privacy. You do not have to display your body to the public with all of its glory or unglorious flaws. But your body is, in a sense, not a secret. And so when you go to the doctor, your doctor gets to see you naked. And there are many things in life like this. There are many things that are private, that aren't meant for public consumption, but they're not a secret. And you know that because in proper contexts, like with clothing, the doctor, or marital intimacy, there are proper contexts for that which is private to be disclosed and exposed to in an appropriate setting. That is what I mean by private. A secret is something that is covered and hidden from everyone. The Bible encourages us to confess our sins one to another. And the reason it does so is because this undermines secrets. Secrets, kind of like resentment, create sludge in your soul and will bear bad consequences in the future. Now, I'm not talking about keeping a birthday present a secret or a surprise party a secret or maybe an infatuation or a like that is secret. Those things are more properly, again, private. What I mean here by a secret is that something that may be private or public. I often see people trying to keep public things secret, and that's usually a big indication that something is wrong. But secrets are something that may be private or public, but is destructively kept covered. Now, and this is a question, do you have a secret in your relationship with your child? It might be something that your child has done. Now, again, things that your adult child has, many of those things are legitimately private. You don't need to talk about them. And I'm not talking about things that are private. I'm talking about things that are secret. Is there a secret? And then the remedy for that is, who do you need to talk to? Now often things that should be private but are kept secret should be transferred then into the realm of the private. You might talk to a therapist or your spouse or a trusted friend or your pastor, but the important thing is to let the secret out. And in fact, our system of laws governs this. There are privileged conversations that are confidential, and even our law recognizes that privilege. And so it's well known in the legal profession, it's well known in the therapist profession, and it's well known in the clergy confession. So if you have a secret, you probably need to tell somebody. If it's a private secret, or if it's a damaging secret, find an appropriate person to disclose it to, and hopefully that person can help you diffuse the secret and bring things back into a much more healthy context. Now, I wanted to end this with the ongoing project that I began in lessons 1 and 2. And that project is this. Are you building your spiritual capacity for bearing pain and suffering by looking to Jesus and remembering the gospel? And those who go to Living Stones know that MDG means misery, deliverance, gratitude, which is kind of my shortcut schema for talking about the gospel. That in fact this world is hard, and you will suffer, and everything will be taken away from you. But Jesus Christ, in his grace, has delivered you. First question and answer of the Heidelberg Catechism. He's delivered you from your sinful nature, although you're not completely free from it. He's delivered you from the world, although you're not completely free from it. And he's delivered you from the tyranny of the devil, although you're still not completely free from it. That's what we have in the gospel. And then we live out of gratitude. Misery, deliverance, gratitude. And so as I mentioned before, saying no to your adult child may bring suffering. It may bring suffering on them, and it may bring suffering on you. Part of what the gospel is for is Jesus does not tell us how to avoid suffering. Jesus lays down his life so that our sufferings can become like his. And what I mean by that is potentially productive. And so part of how we use the gospel is to grow in Christ. And I think it was John Piper wrote a book saying, or a sermon or something that said, don't waste your sufferings. And that's exactly right. Don't waste your sufferings. When your sufferings come upon you, give them to Jesus. Process them with the gospel. And what you will find is that your sufferings then won't turn you bitter. They will turn you into this kind of strange, paradoxical Christian strength where you are both more tender to the sufferings and pains of others, but yet more resilient to having those sufferings and pains control you and lead you into sin or fuel resentment or create secrets. And so this is the ongoing project. Boundaries are helpful. They're a broad spectrum antibiotics, but there will be things in your relational world that boundaries won't resolve. There will be sufferings that no matter of wisdom will finally get rid of. It's those kinds of things that you need to turn over to Jesus, that you need to lean into with the gospel, and those kinds of things will in fact help make you both stronger and more sensitive, make you both loving and yet more firm and authentic in who you are. That's in fact what the gospel does. And so are you getting stronger in standing up to your fears and enduring the painful consequences of your child's trouble? So that's lesson 3 in Parenting Through Adulthood on boundaries, and I hope you found this helpful. I'm going to put this in the church YouTube stream. Leave a comment if you found this helpful, and if you can, be specific about what you found helpful in it. And if in fact you disagree or want to take issue with what I've said, please do so in the comments. I'd love to hear. As the book of Proverbs teaches us, we learn more from our critics than often we do from applause. So thanks for watching.